There's something missing in you, Ollie. And until you figure out what it is, nothing. The booze, the women, all this pointless adrenaline junkie crap. None of it's ever gonna be enough to fill the hole. Today on the Comic Book Report, Green Arrow Year 1. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm making my way through a paperback I've always wanted to read. That's right, we're looking at Andy Diggle and Jock's Green Arrow Year 1. This is the Green Arrow origin story I always wanted, and I finally had a chance to give it a read. And I honestly can't wait to talk about it today. Before I do though, I want to shout out the channel's sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link for it in this video's description, and if you see anything there you like, you can use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's Green Arrow review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Andy Diggle and illustrated by Jock. The comics in this volume were first published by DC Comics beginning in 2007. The volume itself collects Green Arrow Year 1, issues 1 through 6, and finally, this is a standard-size trade paperback collection with glossy print paper stock, a glued binding, and a total of 160 pages. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at that trade paperback collection from DC Comics, and right from the top, I love the cover, the hooded Green Arrow figure stylized by the artist Jock. Right away, I was sold. I think it's just an iconic looking character design, and I'm just hooked right from the jump. So I'll admit this is an older paperback. I'm not sure if they've reprinted this since this printing. I know you can still find this in print. I know that there's a hardcover collection, I believe, but this is what I found at a used comic book store. It's in great condition. It was for the right price, so I had to pick it up. As we look at the spine and eventually the back cover, I will say it is just a standard trade paperback, no bells or whistles, but I do think the design work should be commended. I have been wanting to read this for some time. I am a big fan of any of these Year 1 or kind of origin retellings for these superheroes, and Green Arrow is a hero I like. I'm still making my way through a lot of his bibliography, but I've enjoyed what I've read thus far, and I've heard pretty good things about this title. I will admit I've read a little bit of Andy Diggle in the form of his run on Daredevil, and I wasn't the largest fan of that, but it did not deter me from checking this out, and overall, I was really blown away by this book. Before we dive in though, I did want to show you a look at the binding. As I mentioned, it is a straightforward glued binding. You can see it here. I didn't notice too much gutter loss. I wasn't really affected by that as much, maybe a little bit, but nothing too critical. I think it was well bound. It's held up. This, like I said, is an older book, but my copy is still in great condition. Okay, and now as we segue into the collection proper, we have a nice title page, and actually they included an introduction by Brian K. Vaughan, another very prolific comic book writer. Really enjoyed seeing that. It's a great little introduction, and then we're off to the races with the 6-issue miniseries. And I really like the approach of this book. We start off with Oliver Queen with his kind of assistant guy he's hired. He's on this expedition somewhere in this snowy mountain, and you get this impression that he is kind of off the rails and rudderless. Like Ollie Queen, he's a billionaire basically, but he has no idea what he's doing with his life. He has no real purpose or direction, and so he's doing a lot of thrill-seeking and essentially kind of hedonistic-like behavior, and his guide, buddy, assistant here he's hired to take him on these explorations is like, you need to find purpose, essentially. We segue from that over into a kind of auction, like a snooty, kind of richy auction environment, and Oliver Queen gets loaded. He's drunk, he's making kind of a, well, frankly, not the best best impressions. During the auction, he does bid and win a bow and arrow, and then, yeah, the whole evening kind of just unravels from there. He doesn't have very good mannerisms or social niceties at all. Like I said, he's a bit adrift and kind of off the rails. Soon after this, though, he goes on a yacht with this associate of his, and we kind of have this feeling that the associate has stolen or embezzled money of some sort, and he's basically held at gunpoint. Oliver Queen kind of tries to come into conflict and defend himself, but ultimately he's taken out by this associate, and instead of shooting him in the head, he basically injures him and throws him out to sea while they're in the middle of nowhere. And after that, we basically pick up with him washing adrift this sort of barren, at least at first, seemingly barren island, and he's just trying to survive. He's now this rich guy out of water. He has no resources, nothing. He should have maybe been dead, but he was spared, and now he's trying to figure out what to do. So the next stretch of this comic is him just surviving. He's kind of gone a little bit wild, primal, feral, but he's finding real purpose, the kind of sleep, wake, hunt, gather, forage. He's kind of come back to his roots and what he needs to find purpose in, just trying to survive. He ultimately makes his own kind of bow, and he starts to get very, very proficient. I think they kind of allude to the fact that he took lessons once upon a time, but he's kind of honing himself into this hunter to stay alive and to survive. He's finding a little bit more out about the island along the way, and over the course of these couple issues, basically months pass, and he finds out he's not alone on this island, that it's kind of inhabited by essentially all these people that have been enslaved. This island is actually a huge kind of front or location that has all these huge poppy fields that are used to, I guess, create heroin or some kind of intense drug, and he finds all these people that are basically held under this kind of thumb of this sort of gangster drug kingpin. China White is kind of what they call her. We find out throughout the issues that his once associate who's betrayed him is also in her service, and we have Oliver Queen basically trying to unravel this drug ring, save these people, get revenge on this associate that just tried to kill him, and just all that. And along the way, he finds his purpose as, a hero, We have some great interactions, some great fight sequences, action, and of course, a lot of archery. We have some allusions to trick arrows and other parts of his mythos, but they're all done really tastefully in a way that feels more grounded. The art we get throughout from Jock, I think, is exceptional. The character models are all very stylized and detailed and distinct. The color palette as well is really interesting. I think everything has that kind of greener hue, some more blatantly intense and saturated than other pages, but you kind of have that look to this whole work, almost like it's through a light green lens, and I think that really adds to the kind of atmosphere and kind of tone and feel of the whole book, and it just really worked for me. And by the end of this book, you have so much sympathy and connection with the main character of Oliver Queen. You feel like you got to watch this man grow and mature, and I really love the approach here. It really feels fish out of water. The whole thing is really not set at all in Star City, other than maybe the opening sequence. No, it's mostly on this island, his struggle for survival, and ultimately him taking down not only the person who betrayed him, but this whole drug kingpin, saving the day. There are so many more twists and turns than just that, and I won't really spoil that too much here, but it's really a great ride. It's pretty straightforward. It's not too layered or dense. I don't want to say it's a paint by numbers plot kind of setup, but it did feel familiar and yet distinct enough to be really enjoyable. The character does feel unmistakably Ollie Queen, although a bit young, and I loved every moment of this. I think the art from Jock also absolutely complemented the writing by Diggle, which I thought was perfect. I thought it was pitch perfect. Dialogue was great. Internal narration was all great. This work actually has me completely reevaluating this writer, and I'm interested to seek out other works from him. In fact, other than Daredevil in this, if you know any other great books from Andy Diggle, let me know in the comments. I am curious. Jock is an artist I've already been a fan of, but to see him shine throughout this entire work, it was really a blast. Ultimately, though, it is resolved. In the last panel of this book, we do get to see Oliver Queen as Green Arrow kind of looking over his city, and I thought that was a perfect way to end this book. I could not have been happier. Like I said, I know there are hardcover editions for this book. It is something that if I find a good value, it might might be worth upgrading for me because I enjoyed the experience with this run so much. I would say this work is not overwhelmed with characters. We have a small cast list here, maybe 4 or 5 major characters, but they're all done really well. I think they're all pretty rounded characters for the most part, other than possibly the villain China White. I feel like it's a bit one note. But I think for this work, I didn't necessarily need more nuance from that character, especially when we got so many layers for the others. This was a really well-paced book as well. Like I mentioned, it's 6 issues, and I really don't feel like it overstayed its welcome, and yet I was left wanting to read more Green Arrow, but not necessarily needing more from this narrative. I think it played out perfectly. This was, I think, a really well spaced out 6 issues. I think sometimes with these miniseries, I either think it's over long or over short, but no, this feels right at 6 issues. I think that they did a really good job with that. It's a speedy read as well. I think for someone interested in these trade paperbacks, you could easily read this in one sitting, no problem. I also think like Batman Year One or some of these other origin retellings, this is one I could easily see reading over and over again. I know with Batman Year One or Superman Birthright or some of these other Year One titles or other relaunches, I'll read them over and over again here and there because they're a great self-contained start to a superhero story. And I think that this is easily going to go on those shelves along with the rest as just a great superhero origin book. I think that this is one that should absolutely be commended even more than I heard. I did hear pretty good reviews on this title, but I didn't hear enough. This is honestly wonderful. I really had a ton of fun with it. Another sequence I want to mention is actually here toward the end, where basically Green Arrow goes to the main compound of this drug kingpin and tries to topple the whole organization. This was so well built up to, and the payoff was perfect. I think the sets, I'm going to call them sets, the kind of scene dressing that Jock displays here as well, seeing the compound and the layout, I think even tactically, everything is just really lined up well. It's believable. The sense of tension is perfect. I think the conflict is really well character motivated, and like I said, it just gels correctly. I think the story structure is all there, and the resolution for this, the climax of this story, I couldn't have been happier with it. Like I said, it kind of starts a little slower. It's very character focused with Oliver Queen, but the last act really does feel like a full-on blockbuster action movie, but it's still very well deserved, and it is the fruition of the character development we've gotten to see throughout the whole book, and I love that. I love that it waited to go a little bit bigger toward the end of this collection because it felt like it grew to the logical endpoint, but it had this epic scope that I just liked. Like I said, it felt like I was watching a very good action movie, and that's a really high compliment I could give this book. It probably goes without saying, but I will vocalize it here explicitly that this is a perfect place to start reading Green Arrow. If you're someone that maybe you liked the television show on the CW network, this is a really fun entryway into the world of Green Arrow. There are, of course, other great Green Arrow works I would recommend for new readers. I think the other big starting point is like The Longbow Hunters from Mike Grell. It's a great, I think, 3-issue kind of miniseries that kicks off his whole run on the character. It's also very character grounded. A little bit more gritty and kind of urban environment, cityscape kind of stuff. This is obviously a little bit different and set apart, being on this kind of desolate island, or maybe not so desolate. But yeah, like I said, I think this is a perfect starting point for new readers or people that are maybe just interested in the character, especially if you want to just kind of get in, get out. I think this work really does stand alone quite well. And I think if you don't like Green Arrow, if this is a character that's never appealed to you, but you want to check them out, this is also a great place to go. As we reach the back of the collection, we do have kind of a script outline with some character sketch work throughout, which I thought was a nice detail. With trade paperback, you don't necessarily expect a bunch of extras, but it is always nice to see it. And we do have a good couple pages here. And if you're someone who likes to see how these books are made or the process, it's really fun to look at outline or script pages like this. We also have a couple kind of art pics and covers reproduced, but that's really the end of this collection. That is the trade paperback for Green Arrow Year One by Andy Diggle and Jock. As you could probably tell from me gushing these last 10 minutes or so, I am a big fan now. I really enjoyed this, and it frankly has me wanting to read more Green Arrow. In fact, if you have recommendations beyond the Mike Grell run or what Kevin Smith did, both of which I enjoyed, I would love to hear it in the comments. And now I think all that's left to do is to give this comic a grade. for a wonderful origin story retelling for a DC Comics staple that needs a little bit more credit, the Comic Book Report is happy to give Green Arrow Year 1 by Andy Diggle and Jock an A-. I think for me, this is definitely must-read territory, especially if you're a fan of DC Comics, and certainly if you're a fan of Green Arrow. I cannot overstate how fun this read was for me. It was a breath of fresh air, a great recommendation for superhero comic fans, but even people that like non-superhero comics, you could probably gateway them with something like this. It felt a lot more grounded, and it was something a little bit different. Even for a DC Universe book, it felt very outside the normal DC Comics bubble, and I mean that in a good way as well. A really great book, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the title if you've read it in the comments. For everyone else, thank you so much for watching. This has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, a comment, and maybe check out one of my other videos on your way out. Thanks so much. Have a good one.